Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. Not a video actually that I intended to make. I wasn't going to do a video today, but the response to yesterday's video, the one about tarot and synchronicity and non-duality and how tarot, my speculations on as to how tarot works, just got such a positive response that I thought it would be worth doing another video based on the book that I've been working through, Wheel of Tarot, A New Revolution. And can I just say, first of all, actually, that the welcome that I've received from other pagan and tarot YouTubers over the last couple of weeks since I've started doing this has just been fantastic. I'm not going to name anyone because I would worry that I missed someone out, but a number of people, including people whose YouTube channels I've admired for a long time, have just been so welcoming and have made me really feel as though I have nothing to worry about in terms of starting this initiative. So thank you all very much for that, and I look forward to connecting with you further in the future. This video also gives me an opportunity to pick up on something I mentioned in a previous video, again which I wasn't going to talk about quite yet, but I think fits quite well with the topic of this video, and that's about my tarot dream. I mentioned it in my video about Tarot of the Old Path in relation to the Empress card. It's a very personal dream, one that is very significant in my life and that helps explain, I think, why I'm so interested in tarot and other symbolic systems of divination and psychological exploration, spiritual exploration, shall we say. But first let me read a bit to you, or let me talk to you a bit about this book, the chapter in the book that's relevant to today's topic. And it's a chapter called A Transpersonal Approach to Symbolic Therapy, Dreams, Tarot and Synchronicity by Mary C. Culberson, PhD. And again, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about the details of the experiment that she did, partly because I don't think I would explain it terribly well, but just a very brief summary of it. Effectively, what she was looking for, or trying to find out, was there some kind of connection, or is there some kind of connection between the type of dreams that the type of images that we experience in our dreaming state and the symbolic images that appear in the tarot. And she talked a little bit about why she came to explore this, but the structure of the study is something like this. She worked with subjects who were asked to incubate their dreams. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that means. I mean, I think I know what it means in terms of planting ideas in their own heads and doing meditative practices to stimulate a particular type of dream, thinking of particular questions before going to sleep and so on, to try and stimulate a particular dream and dreaming state. But effectively, she got them to do this over the course of 2 weeks for two dreams. So they went through this process, and once they had the dream that they were trying to incubate, once they had the dream that they recognised as being the one they were trying to stimulate within their own minds, they recorded the dream themselves in a notebook, and they then were subject to a dream analysis by somebody else. So somebody else would analyse the dream the way that they had described it and would just draw out the potential symbolic meaning. And then the subjects were asked to rate that dream analysis using a questionnaire to say how accurate it was in relation to what they believed the dream to be and how relevant it was to their life. So that was one set of data that Culberson gathered, if you like. Excuse me, I'll have a little sip of my drink. Red clover infusion. If you want the recipe, let me know and I'll give you the recipe. It's delicious. Very refreshing and very good for you too. Yeah, so that was one set of data. And then the next set of data was they took the same incubation question, the one that they used to stimulate the dream that they were trying to have, to a tarot reader who was chosen for the study. And they would take this question. The tarot reader knew nothing about the dream they were trying to incubate and knew nothing about the incubation process, if you like, or at least the detail of it. I think they probably did know about the question. I can't quite remember now. But anyway, the question was taken to the tarot reader. They did the tarot reading, and again, the subject afterwards rated the tarot reading in relation to, by filling in a questionnaire in relation to how accurate it was, how relevant it was to them, and I think they also rated it in terms of how close to the dream it was. So now we have two sets of data, and those two sets of data were taken to a set of participants who were called judges, or study, maybe they were part of the study team that was doing the study, but they were the judges. They weren't given the background to all of the questions that were being used to stimulate the tarot readings and the dreams, but they were given the dream data, in other words the description of the dream that the study subjects had, and they were given the details of the tarot reading that related to that dream that had been generated from the same incubation question, but that tarot reading was mixed in with a number of false sets of tarot readings. I think it was a 3-card reading, and it was mixed in with 2 or 3 false sets. So the judges were given the dream and 3 or 4 sets of tarot cards, and what they had to do was analyse each one of those sets of tarot cards in relation to how closely it related to the dream. In other words, what they were trying to do was identify which of these tarot readings is the one that relates to the study, to the incubation question that generated the dream. Okay? And the hypothesis was that if tarot and dreams come from the same symbolic ground and are generated by the same symbolic archetypes, if you like, then there should be a relationship between the two. And here's what happened. Here's the result. Once all the rankings and ratings were returned by the judges, the judging data were then statistically analysed in 2 ways. First, a chi-square was applied to determine the significance of the rankings of the correct and incorrect tarot spreads in correlation with the dream for each of the 3 judges. Then a t-test was employed 3 times to compare the mean ratings of the correct and incorrect tarot spreads for the first and second trials of each of the 12 subjects, and finally for the combination of the 2 trials. Don't worry if you don't understand all the technical statistical language, because I don't. The point is that they're just analysing the match between the dreams and the tarot readings to see if they're statistically significant. The statistical results of both the judges' rankings and the ratings showed that the relevant values fell at or beyond the 0.05 level. That's the level beyond which they believe that the statistics would show that the match between the dream and the tarot spreads was just the result of random chance. These data constitute evidence that something other than chance is operating in the judge's ability to correctly match the tarot spread chosen with the dream and incubation issue for the subject. In other words, there was a statistically significant match between, or a statistically significant rate of correct matching of the relevant tarot reading with the relevant dream. And she's talking now about the results. I have concluded that this statistically significant evidence supports the hypothesis that was tested by this research study. This conclusion maintains that the judges were able, at or beyond the 0.05 level, to perceive the symbolic connection between the themes, issues and contents of the dream and the tarot for a given individual. If there is a coherent inner process, which this hypothesis maintains, if symbols reflect it, and if dreams and the tarot both use these symbols, then it logically follows that an incubated dream and a tarot spread on the same inner theme should give similar symbolic responses. The 0.05 level indicates that real similarities exist in the symbolism of themes, issues and contents of the dream and the tarot spread. This does not speak to the correctness of the answer by the dream or tarot spread to the incubation question, but rather says that the inner dream symbols and the outer tarot symbols that are selected are objectively consistent and communicate the same response. This is the case even though dream symbols are selected by an inner process and the tarot symbols are selected apparently randomly from a limited set of external images. And if you look at my video from yesterday, which I'll link below, that discusses the issue of whether cards in a tarot spread are in fact random, or if there's something other than random chance operating in a properly conducted properly approached tarot spread. So I'll let you delve into that by having a look at that video below. But that leads me on to my experience of a connection between dreams and tarot, and it's actually a connection that I didn't realise was a connection between dreams and tarot until many years after I had the dream. So here is the story. And what you need to know by way of background to this story is that when I was 9 years old, nearly 10, about 3 months away from my 10th birthday, my mum died. And she died of a very rare, very aggressive form of cancer, blood cancer, called plasma cell leukemia. And she'd been ill for a number of years before she died, certainly very ill for the last 2 years, and then she passed away. It's also important to know that I was never, if you like, directly told that she was going to die, which I'm very, very grateful for. My parents elected not to sit me down and say, Mum's going to die. And I'm so grateful for that. I think that what that enabled me to do, and enabled me to have, was in the last weeks and months of my mum's life, although I could see that she was very ill, I wasn't in a state of perpetual terror or panic that she was going to leave me, which meant that I was able to just love her and look after her and care for her as best as a 9-year-old can. And I'm very grateful that I didn't have the conscious knowledge of her death or impending death hanging over me. I'm not, by the way, saying that it's wrong for anyone to tell their children about something like that. So if there's somebody watching this who is either someone who's lost a parent and who was told, that's absolutely fine. Or if there's somebody watching this who is in the position of facing a terminal illness and is wondering about whether to tell their children, there's no right or wrong answer. It has to be done with the best of intentions and the best will and thoughtfulness, and based on the circumstances. Personally speaking, I'm grateful that my parents didn't tell me directly, because it meant that my relationship with my mum didn't turn into something unhappy towards the end. And in fact, the litmus test for me is that the last conversation we had before we parted company for the last time, she was going into hospital for a blood transfusion, which she had to have periodically because of the illness. When I said goodbye to her, and I was dropped off at my grand's where I was staying while Mum was in hospital, and Dad would be there with her, the last words that we said to each other were, "I love you." I wasn't hanging around her neck crying and sobbing and so on, and I'm really grateful that that was the case, because I'm just very grateful. So anyway, that was good for me to not be told, and she died, and after she died, I consider myself very lucky in the sense that my family rallied round. My dad was a fantastic, and still is a fantastic, father to me. My gran and my aunts and various people in the family and friends just rallied round and really helped us after Mum died. Here's where the dream comes in. So when she died, I knew on some level, on the day that Dad came back from the hospital on his own, before he even said anything, I knew that she had died. And I think that's because on some level I always knew that she was going to die, although I didn't consciously know it, or at least I didn't allow it into my conscious awareness. But one of the reasons I think I knew, and one of the reasons I think I was prepared, is I had a dream, and I can't be absolutely sure how soon before she died I had this dream. It could have been a couple of weeks, it could have been a couple of years, I really don't know. But here's the dream. I'm sitting in a theatre. I'm the only person in the theatre. I'm the only one in the audience. And being pulled across the stage, or moving across the stage from my right to my left, is a very ornate, very beautiful, gold and silver, sparkling, open carriage. And sitting in that carriage is a figure, a queen-like figure. And in the dream, in my image of the dream, this figure has a really big head. Now, I'm not quite sure whether that's because proportionately the figure in the dream did have a really big head, or it's just that my attention zoomed in on it. But as I remember it, I can see this really big head. And this queen-like figure was crowned with a crown of glittering silver and gold stars. Very beautiful, very sparkly, very just full of light. And it was my mum. It was my mum's face. And she was, as she moved across the stage, she didn't say anything, no words were spoken, but she smiled and waved to me. And as she moved across the stage and eventually off the stage, the message that I believe was transmitted to me from the dream, and I can't say that I woke up the next morning knowing that this is what I had been told, but I think on some level, this is the message that penetrated. It was my mum telling me, I'm going, I'm leaving, I have to leave, I'm dying, but behind all appearances, I'm okay, and you're okay too. And that was proven to be the case, certainly for me, that I was okay. As I say, when she died, the family rallied round. My dad was just fantastic in the midst of what must have been terrible shock and grief for him. And in the honest description from my point of view is that actually, although of course I'm not minimising the loss, of course it was a huge loss, and I was sad that she died and upset that she died, I didn't actually feel motherless for very long, if at all, because other people mothered me. My gran did, my aunties did, my dad did. In fact, once when I was upset a few weeks after Mum had died, I don't remember crying particularly at first, but I did have a moment where I was very upset a few weeks on. And I remember my dad comforting me, and I was saying that I missed Mum. I think it all just sunk in that she wasn't coming back. And he said to me that he understood and he missed her too, and he would just have to be my dad and my mum from now on, which I thought was just a lovely thing and helped me to not feel the loss to the extent that I might have done. Also, my dad remarried a couple of years later to someone who I consider to be my mum, a second mum, and every bit as much my mum as my first mum was, just in different circumstances. So I feel very lucky, and I feel that the mothering principle, the mother archetype, if you like, has never been lacking from my life. And my first mum taught me so much, so I carry her with me every day in the way that I relate to the world and the way that I think about things. She taught me a great deal about kindness and respect and caring for others. So she never left me, in a sense, although in the dream she told me physically, or the dream told me that physically she was leaving. But here's the interesting bit from my perspective in relation to the tarot. I mentioned in my Tarot of the Old Path video that was my first tarot deck. So it was a number of years after getting into tarot that I first discovered the Rider-Waite Smith deck, which of course is such a fundamental deck in tarot history. And when I first got a copy of that deck, a hold of a copy of that deck, and I was flicking through the cards, I stopped short when I got to, of course, the Empress card. Because what I recognised as soon as I saw that card was that this was the image I had seen in my dream. Not exactly, but basically, down to the posture and the crown of stars. The difference being that in the Rider-Waite Tarot, the Empress is coming into the tarot, if you like, from left to right, almost like entering the stage of the tarot. And in my dream, this queen-like figure, my mum, was leaving, going from right to left. Also, of course, as I learned more about tarot and the symbology of the Empress card, it's very connected to birth and rebirth and mothering and motherhood and the mother archetype and the mother principle. So I think it was a very powerful symbolic communication. Do I think that the tarot spoke to me? I don't know. I mean, there are different explanations, I suppose, of how this could be. Was it my mum's psyche on some level transmitting something to my psyche? Was it my own psyche speaking to itself, preparing me for something that I knew on some instinctive, intuitive level was going to happen, and just making sure that I was psychically and psychologically prepared for it? Was it some kind of emanation from the collective unconscious? I don't know. What I do know is that the symbolism of that dream and the symbolism of the Empress tarot card and the symbolism of mother are undoubtedly connected. And it's this that actually, I think, best explains why I'm interested in tarot and why I'm interested in symbolic systems, and why I think they are and can be extremely relevant to helping us move through our lives in constructive, positive, helpful ways. So I don't know the explanation, but I think that symbolism that underlies both dreams and the tarots and life is connected at a very deep level. And for me, it makes the exploration of tarot just so exciting and relevant and empowering. So that's my my tarot dream, and I want to just close with a quote that actually comes from the beginning of the chapter in this book on the study that I just described, and it's from Eric Fromm and a piece of writing of his called The Forgotten Language. And what he says in this is, symbolic language is a language in its own right. In fact, the only universal language the human race ever developed. And that for me is just so relevant, because it's the universality of these symbols and the universality of the messages behind these symbols that just gets beyond all the differences in culture, differences in gender, differences in race, differences in age, differences in sex, differences in class, all that kind of stuff. Beyond all the appearances of difference, there is a fundamental connection, I believe, between all of us and between all of existence. And the tarot and other symbolic systems speak from that connectedness, and that's why I think they're so powerful. So that's my tarot dream and a bit more about the connection between dreams and tarot. And I think probably this will be the last video I do, certainly before I travel back home up north to Scotland to be with my parents for Christmas, which I'm very much looking forward to. I might try and do a couple of videos while I'm up there. I've got some tarot decks that I'm going to take with me, including some new ones. I've had a bit of a tarot binge lately, and I think I've got some more coming for Christmas presents. So I think I might have quite a few different decks to talk about, so I'll maybe try and get some videos filmed while I'm up there. I'll certainly take all of my equipment, i.e. my phone, and I'll try and get some decks, get some videos filmed. And if not, then I'll certainly be doing some more when I come back and have a bit of time in the new year before I go back to work. But in the meantime, whatever you're doing for Christmas and however you're spending it, I wish you the very best and happiest of Christmases possible. And I'll look forward to speaking to you again very soon.